A lot of the personal development space comes down to creating habits, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about this and I've come to the conclusion that most habits are they're just not worth doing. They're not worth doing on a day-to-day basis, they're not worth thinking about it. But there is one habit that I believe everybody should be doing. This one habit, if you're not doing this, all of the other habits are pointless, and this one habit is different for everybody. So let me explain. If we look back in personal development in the history, we'll see lots of trends appearing. If we go way back, we had affirmations, everybody was doing them. Then we had meditation, everybody was meditating. Then we had journaling, then we had the Wim Hof method, then we had bullet journaling, then we had cold showers, then we had nofap, then we had all of these different techniques that everybody jumps on for a period of time. And I'd like to say I'm pretty good at creating habits, so why am I not doing all of these habits on a day-to-day basis? We know the benefits of each of these things. If I asked you what are the benefits of meditation, you're going to be able to list off 5 to 6 different benefits. But why am I not doing them? Well, if we take this to the extreme, what is a daily routine of somebody that's doing all of these habits going to look like? They're going to be constantly worrying, have I got this habit going on? Am I doing this habit? So much of their thoughts are going to be going to these habits, and then they're going to miss a habit. They're going to feel guilty that they've missed a habit. So they're going to promise themselves the next day that they're going to do double of the previous habit. And so much of their time and so much of their energy is going towards this, where they've got all of these different habit trackers, constantly looking to see which habit track is the best. And you've got so many different habits that you're going to need habit trackers for your habit trackers. It's simply just not the best thing to do. Whenever you're looking to add something into your life, there's a very simple equation that you have to run it past. And that equation, very simply, is productivity equals outputs divided by inputs. The larger the outputs, the things we get, the benefits of the activity, the better. And the lower the inputs, the lower the costs, the things we have to feed into that activity, the better again. Now, this equation is different for every single person. The inputs and outputs for an individual is going to change compared to everybody else. So this video is not about saying this particular habit's good and this particular habit's bad. This is more a call for you to run this analysis on the things you're doing in your life. And when I ran this analysis on my own life, I discovered that many of the daily habits that I was doing were just overrated. Let's start by exploring the inputs. And one of the inputs that most people don't think about is whenever you're starting a habit, that's occupying a lot of your thoughts on a day-to-day basis. First of all, you've got to do the habit, and when you do something, you're obviously thinking about it. Then you've got to think about the habit, you're probably watching videos and reading books about the habit as well. And third of all, you've got to remember to do the habit. So in your day, you're thinking, oh, I've got to do that habit later, I've got to do that habit later. And all of these thoughts are occupying a space in your mind. Your thoughts are going towards that habit. That's an input, it's a cost of that habit. And I believe that the thoughts that you have are so important. I believe that they're far more important than most people give them credit for. Your thoughts are what determine your emotions. Your thoughts are what determine your problem solving. Your thoughts determine your happiness and where you end up in life. And by directing your thoughts towards one thing, perhaps it's directing your thoughts away from another thing. I believe thoughts is kind of like a zero-sums game. You don't have unlimited thoughts, therefore when you think about one thing, you're not thinking about another thing, and that's the definition of a cost. You spend something on one thing and you can't spend it on another thing. And it's kind of like having a budget allocation. We know that we should be spending a certain amount of money on this thing and a certain amount of money on a different topic. Rent, bills, household chores, whatever the case may be. But we don't have anything like that when it comes to our thoughts. We let things invade and pervade our thoughts regularly on a day-to-day basis. We don't give it the conscious effort to screen what we should let into our thoughts. But I'm making the argument that we should do that. Regardless, whenever you start a daily habit, it's a cost because of the mental space that it takes up in your mind. The second cost is more intuitive, it's the time that it takes. Very clearly, when you add a habit into your life, it's taking time, that's a cost. And it's also taking time away from something else. We have a limited amount of time. If you spend time on one thing, you can't spend time on another thing. It's a zero-sums game again. And this is clear that this is a cost because we all have a limited amount of time and we know the value of our time. If we spend our money, we can earn it back. But if we waste our time, we can't get that back. So as time theorists, we've got to be very, very careful about where our time goes. I believe if you use your time wisely, you'll get a good life. If you don't use your time wisely, you won't get a good life. So the second cost of adding in a daily habit is the time that it takes up. If you have a 30-minute habit every single day over the course of 10 years, that's like 67 days or 76 days of your life. It's a huge chunk of time. So we've got to be very, very careful about what we let into our time. So those two things are the inputs of starting a daily habit. But sometimes, if there's a large enough output, it's still worth doing things that have a large input. So what are the outputs of these daily habits? Now again, I'm not making the case that those habits that I listed are bad. I'm just saying to run your own analysis. And when I ran the own analysis on my life, I discovered that the outputs, whilst I could list many of the different benefits, I was only doing these things because other people had said that I should be doing these things. I was reasoning from analogy instead of reasoning from first principles. Reasoning from analogy is just doing things because other people are doing them, whereas reasoning from first principles is really breaking things down, being intentional about these things and deciding whether or not it's worthwhile for you. And I discovered because these habits had a spike and then they dropped off, they were very similar to just bright, shiny objects. Everyone would get crazy and talk about the benefits of all of these things, and everyone would jump on them. They'd get forgotten about a couple weeks later, and we would go up, follow a bright, shiny object, and then we'd come down whilst we'd drop off of it when the habit doesn't stick. And don't get me wrong, for a lot of these habits, the outputs are pretty good. Like I said, we all know the benefits of doing these things, but the outputs are also quite high. So when I ran this own analysis on myself, I was kind of on the fence. You know, there are clear benefits of all of these habits that I've outlined, but the outputs are also quite high and I didn't know what to do. And then I remembered, like I said, that all of these things are a zero-sum game. If you do one habit, the time and mental energy gone into that thing can be taken away from one other thing. And that made it so clear in my life that I shouldn't be doing these things. I shouldn't even be thinking about these things. And there was one habit in my life that I needed to be doing, and the same applies for you. Let me explain. You see, whenever something's a zero-sum game, we've got the option. Do we do this one thing or do we do another thing? And the daily habits, when I ran my own analysis on them, they were medium leverage. You know, that the outputs were okay and the inputs were also quite large. So it was just a medium leverage activity. It was beneficial for my life, but it cost a lot. Whereas there were other things in my life that were incredibly high leverage. Standing in front of this camera and talking, working on my business directly on the things that I need to be doing to move forwards. Those things are high leverage. So when I had the option, do I spend more of my time doing medium leverage activities? Do I just spend that time doing a high leverage activity? That's when it became clear to me. Yes, these daily habits are beneficial, but are they as beneficial as other things that you could be doing in your life? And if they're not, you should just do more of the things that are beneficial. You should just do more of the high leverage thing instead of getting confused and adding other things onto your plate. Just because something is beneficial for you doesn't mean that it's worth doing, because there may be other things that are even more beneficial for you, and that's what you should be doing. And that leads me on to the daily habit that I believe that everybody should be doing. And that daily habit isn't the same for everybody. It's very simply keeping the main thing the main thing. If you're an artist, the daily habit that you should be doing isn't necessarily meditation or journaling or affirmations or cold showers or all of these things. These things are good, don't get me wrong, but the daily habit that you should be focusing your energy on is picking up a paintbrush. If you're a swimmer, the daily habit that you should be focusing on is getting in the pool. If you're a YouTuber, the daily habit that you should be getting in is standing in front of the camera. These things are the truly most important daily habits. So ask yourself right now, what do you want to achieve? And chances are it's weird, for most things that people want to achieve, there's one habit. If you want to become a best-selling author, you've got to write. For most things you want to achieve, there is one daily habit that you should be doing, and that's where 99% of your focus should be on going. Oftentimes these other bright, shiny object habits that we're doing, they can act as distractions from the main thing. So keep the main thing, and use those other daily habits as accelerators, things that speed up the progress. Because if you're not doing that one main habit that gets you towards the things you want to achieve, everything else is just a distraction. And when you stay super focused on the main thing, you end up repeating that activity. And repetition leads to practice, and practice leads to improvement, and improvement leads to the results that you want to have. So keep the main thing, stay away from distractions, and focus on what's really important for your life. Think of what that is and go and do it. If you've enjoyed this video and you want more positive videos on your homepage, click like and subscribe. Then the YouTube algorithm is going to know that you like this kind of content. It's going to show you more positive videos just like this one so that you can upgrade your life. I'll see you in the next video.